Hey guys, what's going on? Blaine back for another HBO Max review, and today I'm going to be talking about Moonshot. Moonshot is an American sci-fi romantic comedy that tells the story of Walter, a barista who tries desperately to fulfill his wanderlust by traveling to Mars but repeatedly fails in doing so, and the second being Sophie, a college student who misses her boyfriend who also happens to live and work on Mars. When Walter meets and falls in love with a woman the night before she travels to Mars, he decides to take initiative by sneaking aboard Sophie's ship, and teams up with her so that the two can help each other to reunite with their own significant others, and both their travels and their relationships begin to unfold shortly after. At first, I found myself entranced with the overall visual style of the movie and how it looks, but as the story progressed, I found myself increasingly more disappointed with how formulaic it became. It still has redeeming factors, but they're less memorable considering how they're framed around the main characters. Walter, who's played by Cole Sprouse, doesn't have much going for him personality-wise other than the fact that he's overly talkative and sarcastic, and his humor in this regard can be a mixed bag. He can ease the tension during awkward parts of the story, but other times when more subtlety is required, he tends to be more grating. His main motivation for traveling to Mars becomes more confusing over time as well. His desire for traveling and escaping his mundane routine on Earth is understandable, and it gives him a goal to pursue beyond just following the woman he loves, but this desire becomes less clear and consistent as the plot moves along, though I'll talk about this more a bit later. I found Sophie to be a much better character compared to Walter. Her research project goal was much more tangible and fleshed out better, and she has to juggle between wanting to pursue her dream and her wanting to spend time with her boyfriend even though she doesn't want to leave Earth, and it was interesting to see how she tried to balance having the best of both worlds. Although she is a better written character than Walter, she's not without flaws either. She's supposed to have aerophobia, but within a minute of her revealing this, she books a flight to Mars anyway. I suppose this was an excuse, but it was still weird in how it played out, as well as how she was able to get the money to go on the flight in the first place. The bond between Walter and Sophie takes time to develop, but it was still fun to see the two interact. They have good on-screen chemistry together when they're getting along, and especially when the two are like oil and water, as Walter tends to say and do things that rub Sophie the wrong way. While I like the banter that occurs between the two, I never felt any sort of romantic spark that would hint at something more, which is inevitable in this kind of movie. They just seemed more like friends with how they joked and hung out with each other, which is still enjoyable to see, but the lack of romantic tension is disappointing considering this movie's genre. The attachment they have to the people they're going to meet with on Mars is strange as well, though especially so with Walter. His motivation for going to Mars mostly changes from wanting adventure to wanting to be with this woman named Ginny, who he only knew for a few hours before her flight, which is an incredibly stupid and creepy excuse to have just to go to Mars. With Sophie, it's not quite as bad, but still lacks context. She's had a history with her boyfriend Calvin since she was a teenager, but in a more familial kind of way where his family took her in. I don't mind this aspect as much, though it seems weird to me that they'd be okay with just leaving her on Earth even despite her studies. There's a variety of scenarios that take place once the two make it to the space station en route to Mars, so I was glad that it wasn't just the two cooped up in one place the whole time. They do things like attend parties, go to classes, and even go on a spacewalk, which was the most memorable scene in the movie for me thanks to its beautiful cinematography. Because Walter is an illegal stowaway, there's a lot of comedy to be found as well, as Walter and Sophie come up with a bunch of different ruses to fool the staff on board while he assumes her boyfriend's identity. This results in misunderstandings that frequently put Walter in the spotlight, and it was hilarious to watch him fumble his way through explanations. This being said, the comedy isn't great when it comes to the supporting characters. One example includes Captain Tartar, who exists only to say bad jokes. I had a feeling based on her name alone that she was going to produce some sort of sauce joke later on, and sure enough, she drops it in cringeworthy fashion. One pair of characters was particularly frustrating in the form of a lesbian couple who never played any importance to the story at hand. For some reason, they try to keep a bad joke about erections going anytime they're on screen, and it gets old real quick. One character that stood out above the rest though was Zach Braff's role as Leon Covey, who heads the colonization of Mars and space at large. He's able to elevate the lame dialogue, and it's just a blast to see him cheese his way in as a billionaire space tycoon. Beyond the comedy, the movie also has some messages to say about exploration and colonization, and how humans are always looking for the next frontier to call home at the expense of their long-term prospects, especially regarding the state that Earth is in during the movie itself. Despite how dire this sounds, I was actually surprised surprised to see how grounded it was in its depiction of the future. There are things like space travel, robots, and even holograms, but otherwise it's the same old Earth as usual with a bit more garbage lying around, which, funny as it may sound, was a nice change of pace from the usual doomsday scenario. It has a much more optimistic vibe than other movies like it, like referencing algae that'll destroy garbage, and also with how uplifting its technical presentation is. The soundtrack is upbeat, and the movie makes use of pink and purple hues in its lighting to enhance the positive atmosphere, rather than just being dark and depressing shades of grey. Sometimes the movie gets in over its head with how sappy it can be. There's one scene where Walter is making a presentation and refers to terraforming, hinting that Sophie shouldn't change herself to make others happy. I can understand his logic, but it doesn't change how cliché it comes across. There's a lot of meta, self-aware dialogue as well, where he and Sophie state out loud what their expectations for a potentially romantic situation might be, which I personally found to be annoying. I've noticed this concept pop up more often in movies these days, and in this one it's more distracting than endearing. I got the feeling when watching this that the filmmakers were big fans of sci-fi. A lot of care and attention to detail was put into the retro-futuristic look of the movie, even with a cute nod to Alien in the form of a cat named Ripley. It's a shame that the same amount of effort wasn't put into fleshing out the romance between the two leads. Overall, Moonshot is a decent but ultimately forgettable flick that is equal parts fun and frustrating to experience. If you like romantic comedies and you're looking for one that's set in a light-hearted science fiction setting, I think you might enjoy checking this one out. The romance between the lead characters and the comedy in general could have been done better, but it's still a pleasant watch nonetheless. Contrary to its title, it doesn't end up reaching its lunar expectations, but it does land somewhere among the stars. What did you think about this movie? Did you like its positive take on a futuristic setting, or did you think it could have done a better job with its romance? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways guys, that's going to wrap up my review of Moonshot. Thanks for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always stay tuned for the next part, where next time I review the meta comedy, The Bubble. Bye bye!